Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. On tonight's programme, travel and tourism. They are deeply interconnected because without an efficient transport and traffic system, tourists can't move easily around Gibraltar. Residents feel the strain of congestion and parking pressures. Tourism, retail, hospitality and small businesses all rely on people being able to move around efficiently around Gibraltar. With the treaty opening up our borders, there's also the potential for greater numbers on our roads. So, are we ready to show visitors just how special Gibraltar is, or are we falling behind in our tourism and transport provision? What's the vision for the years ahead? Well, who better than the government and opposition MPs to tell us? I'm joined by Ministers for Travel and Tourism, Cortes and Christian Santos. Thank you very much for joining us. And on the other side, we have the Shadow Minister for Transport and Tourism, Giovanni Origo, and also the GSD Shadow Minister for Development and Planning and Heritage, Damon Bossino. Thank you very much. Now, in order to accommodate schedules, we've had to pre-record this Viewpoint earlier on today, so I won't be able to take live email questions from you on this programme today. But we are going to get stuck in now. And when I talk about travel, I mean travel in relation to tourism. And so what I'd just like to ask all of you very quickly, if you can just give me a quick roundup of your thoughts of where we are today with travel and tourism. Minister, would you like to begin?
Well, in respect of tourism, I think we're at the cusp of a huge expansion. I think that things happening elsewhere in the world is also bringing more tourists in our area. We're seeing an increase in tourist figures. We are now also investing massively in our tourist sites and our heritage sites. So things are moving, things are developing. And obviously we have to have our finger on the pulse and make sure that we deal with it and maximise the benefits that are coming to Gibraltar.
OK, Mr Santos?
I think we're at the perfect time from a tourism perspective. The new treaty is going to make the flow in and out of Gibraltar much easier. It's going to be a gateway between Gibraltar, the UK, and Gibraltar and the EU. We've had a great rise in numbers in the past 2 years. Last year, 2025, for the hotels has seen record years, and there's an increase in cruise calls as well in this coming year. There's a lot of interest in Gibraltar as a destination. So the work that we've been doing, marketing Gibraltar as a new, fresh destination with its traditional roots, seems to be working. We were just nominated this year as well as Gibraltar as one of the best tourist boards in the Globe Travel Awards, which is fantastic. We also won an award with ATO, which is an independent tour operators and agents organisation. So we're doing well. And
Gibraltar, I think, came in the top 10. I think it was 10th.
Yep.
It came
as one of the best destinations. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's within Europe or...
Last year we were one of the rising stars for British Airways. And this year we're in the top 10 in searches for short-term city breaks. And when you consider that the other people were surrounded by Athens, Madrid, Barcelona, and that type of destination, it's great to be featured there.
So good news, Mr. Bossino.
Well, we're going to be subjected to a lot of spin during the course of this debate, which we will be challenging, because our view is that the tourism portfolio has been utterly mismanaged by the GSOP Liberals since they've been in office. There has been a lack of vision. There has been a lack of a roadmap. There has been lack of analysis of where we want to take Gibraltar forward in this area. And I think it is also important, because a symptom of that is the fact that there have been a complete and utter lack of delivery of electoral promises. And I'm talking about electoral promises from the last election in 2023. And I will be citing a few during the course of this debate. But I think one needs to mention in particular the entry points, as you rightly pointed out. I feel almost like a broken record, because the last time that I was with Minister Santos in this studio on the 29th of May last year, I complained about almost exactly the same things. And one of the things that he promised was that we were going to have a tourism strategy. A year on, in what we hope will be the last year of this government, in their 4th term, we still do not have a strategy. So for all those reasons, we say that we have a completely different view to the one that has been expressed during the course of their interventions now.
In all fairness, it would be good to hear what that view is and what your ideas are. But first of all, let's hear Mr. Origo. What's your response?
Hi, Ross. Thank you for having us. Firstly, I'm pretty pleased to see that we're having this debate together, transport and tourism, given how interlinked these two sectors are. And from our point of view, I think we need to judge this on outcomes and not intentions, because at the end of the day, the policies are there, the ideas are being set, but we need to judge and see whether this government has actually executed on those ideas, because the tourist product is already in place. Numbers of people are coming, but are we taking the people to the attractions? Are we moving them around efficiently? Are we getting them to spend more money? Are we suffering less from congestion? And it's whether we think on the ground if people are having these positive experiences or negatives, and that's what we're here to judge a government on.
Okay.
I think also in that context, we also have to consider in terms of the strategy, lack of strategy and lack of vision and lack of a roadmap that I mentioned earlier, is the fact that what we are seeing here is a very disjointed approach. Only in the last few days, we have had Minister Cortes coming up with these initiatives, both in relation to heritage sites and in relation to transport and traffic, which I think was almost because we had this debate and he had to sort of prove that he was doing something about it. With the greatest of respect to him, what we need to have, and we ought to have seen the government hitting the ground running, is in relation to the opening of the frontier as a result of the deal. They have been on the driving seat as a result during the course of the negotiations. We haven't been. They knew it was going to happen. In 2023, we were sold the story that we were 0.01% away from doing a deal. Why on earth did, in the same manifesto, promise that they were going to be revamping, for example, the frontier entrance? And now they're saying, well, we are glad we didn't do it. We're glad we did. No.
I'm going to let you respond now because there's a lot of points.
I think I'm making valid points.
Yeah, I'm going to let you respond now because there are a lot of points there. But can I just say that we do want to focus on travel in the first part of the programme and tourism in the second part, because there's a lot of criticism there. I'm going to let you just quickly respond to that, and then we're going to move on to the travel.
Go first?
I'll go first with regards to the works at the frontier. What type of person or mind think that it's viable to do works at an entry point when there is no deal at the time? And then you mentioned the 0.01% of being away from the deal. Well, a lot has happened, and right now, the moment that we struck a deal, the works are now they're happening now. They're not going to happen 5 years ago when we didn't know what was happening.
You promised it in the manifesto.
Well,
there are plans there are not just plans. There are
but they're happening now, Damon.
There are lovely,
they're happening now.
Colour pictures.
Damon, they're happening now.
About the new frontier. What's happening with the cruise liner terminal?
They're happening now.
When you said that, well, last year you said, Christian, you said last year that you were not going to be announcing a new cruise liner terminal, although it was set out in your 2023 manifesto because you were working with Gemma Vasquez in respect of a port master plan.
Exactly.
Only a few months ago, you announced the EOI, the expressions of interest in respect of the cruise liner terminal.
Exactly,
I would like to hear from the Minister, please.
Yes,
we've not had a chance yet.
Nonsense. I cannot sit here listening to nonsense and not be able to reply.
Will have your
yes, but I need to directly reply.
He's asking me about
it. 1 second, he's going to give me...
You carry on.
Last year, we didn't announce the works because...
Two-man show, don't worry.
No, because both myself and Minister Arias Vasquez were working on a master plan. We decided on what the needs were. We've put an EOI. We've chosen a preferred... already a preferred...
developer?
Bidder. The preferred bidder, sorry. Who we're meeting to finalise things next week, and as soon as we do, and we have an MOU, we'll announce it.
I think
but
the
the timings aren't next to be set by Mr. Bossino. We announced it in 2023, and we're still not at the end of the life of this Parliament.
Well, you have 1 year, almost.
You said last year that you were at a very advanced stage.
Minister Cortes,
I can
now,
announce it next week.
You very kindly invited us to speak for less than a minute.
Sorry.
Not for tea. As an introductory thing, and Damon...
You make up for it now, it's fine.
I will. I mean, Damon has just launched into it because obviously he's got to justify his presence on the programme. It really is typical of the GST, or some members of the GST in particular. They're prophets of doom. You know, everything is terrible, everything is awful. Broken record, sí, pero dijo rayado, but a record that wouldn't even make it to the top 100 because nothing of what Damon has said makes any sense. We have not seen a disjointed approach. The way that Christian and I work together, with me doing the sites and transport as well, and Christian doing the marketing, is working really, really well. Strategy, of course there's a strategy. If what Damon wants is a document headline strategy, that's absolutely fine. But you can see what our strategy is. We're investing in the product. We are doing more work than ever on the sites in the Upper Rock and elsewhere in Gibraltar, probably around £9 million a year using tourist money, because it's not taxpayers' money, it comes from outside. The sites that are about to open within the next 6 to 12 months are incredible. There's massive investment. There's huge positive
Can you tell
response.
us? Are you able to
Yeah,
give
I
us
can
some
tell you.
information on
I
what's-
can tell you. The
One
City
moment,
and the
Mr.
Siege
We'll come
will
to you.
open in June. The Moorish Castle by the end of May will have the Tower of Homage open, and the rest of the complex in July. The northern defences will open and access through to the Moorish Castle from town by July. In December, the northern defences park will be finished.
Okay.
Tovey Cottage, O'Hara's Battery, all these things that are a butterfly farm.
Well,
That's
okay.
a strategy,
I want
not a piece of
I want to
paper.
ask questions that the public want the answers to. Okay, so we know that the frontier is going to open and it is likely to attract a lot more vehicular traffic into Gibraltar. We already have over 50,000 cars on the road. What provisions are in place to accommodate extra vehicles coming into Gibraltar in terms of congestion and parking and access to areas?
Okay. The plan is that we will encourage...
Can I just intervene before we lose the thread of what John has just said?
We are dealing with tourism in part 2 of the programme, though.
Well, fine.
Can
but-
it wait
but-
to part 2?
I just want to make just one small point, two small points. One is in relation to the strategy. When John sort of dismisses this point that are we expecting a document saying strategy? That is what we were promised last year. Yes, we are expecting that because that is what Minister Santos promised. And quite frankly, it should have been done in 2011, not in well, it hasn't been done yet. Secondly, let's have more of a discussion about the so-called investment that Minister Cortes is talking about when he says it's not going to cost the taxpayer any money. The reality is that, one, has there been any tender for these sites and the giving out to private entities? Two, how are these things being managed? What type of performance indicators are these contracts going to be subjected to? Thirdly, can he now tell us what cut each of these entities are going to be getting from the ticket sales at June Gate?
Absolutely,
That
but
is
Mr.
important
Bossino,
information
sorry, can I
which
just
people
say...
are entitled to know, and that has a direct impact on the product.
OK, absolutely, but I'm chairing this debate and we're talking about travel at the moment. I have said that we will talk about tourism eventually, and if you don't... And I will pick up on those points afterwards, but if you don't mind...
Yes.
allowing me to sort of run the agenda. So what I wanted to ask you was exactly that. How are you managing traffic once the treaty...
So we don't know exactly what the impact's going to be. People are saying there's going to be more traffic flowing in. It's quite likely that will be the case. And what we're working with now with our colleagues on both sides of the border is discouraging vehicles from coming in to Gibraltar. We're looking at the possibility of a park and ride. We're looking at...
There's been years talking about park and ride.
But this now changes the whole dimension, because now it follows a treaty. There's cooperation with our neighbours in La Linea.
Is it where it was originally going to be at the
that
entrance
is still
of Devil's Tower
under
Road?
discussion.
Right.
It need not necessarily be on this side of the border, and these are discussions that are going on. Obviously, we have to enhance public transport, and we're looking at changing the location of our bus stops. This is something that we're working on now with a view to having in place as soon as possible.
John, okay. Please accept these two premises, just these two. One, you have been in the driving seat as a Minister of the Crown since 2011. Since 2016, you have also been in the driving seat as a member of the government. You and your colleague have been members of the government that has been receiving information, I assume, about how the deal was progressing. You have known sooner than us when this deal was going to be taking place. You are being given details. But just as your Minister for Business was incapable of answering basic questions that were put to her from members of the business community, you are also, I'm afraid to say, incapable of answering a very fundamental, basic question which has been raised by Ros in relation to what is going to happen when we have a free-flowing frontier, indeed, no border. That is a failure on the part of this government. And you should be, with the greatest of respect, in a better position when on the 15th of July this thing happens to be able to hit the ground running. If it is the case that it is the government's policy decision to have a park and ride. We ought to know where it's going to go. And if it is the case that you are entering into negotiations and discussions with the La Linea Town Council in order to do so, you should have the documents there ready to sign in order to be able to do that. And the thing built. This is potentially going to be huge.
Clearly,
and
Damon,
it's a dereliction, quite
repeatedly,
frankly, of duty on your part.
Damon repeatedly shows his lack of experience in government and how things work, and long may that be the case. This is actually a good problem to have, because if we refer to the treaty, we are now looking at how we're going to manage an influx of tourism, which will be great for the economy of Gibraltar, which we will manage like we always do, as opposed to a potential collapse of the border. Yes. I think this is a great problem to have, right? And therefore, it's something that I'm very, very glad to address, and we are addressing it. Damon clearly doesn't have all the information, but it is not possible to make firm plans until you know what's going to happen. We have plans which are being developed, and they will be public in due course, and not so long from now, which will reconfigure the traffic at the border. So we have a very strong technical team working on it. There's a lot of work to be done, and we will get
Cortes,
it done.
I do have to say, before I bring in Ms. Origo, I do have to say that you said that, you know, we've only just now signed the treaty. I mean, it's not signed yet, but we've only just agreed it. But we have known for the past 2 years what the treaty was going to look like. We have known for the past 2 years that it was about doing away with the frontier, even though we had to prepare for the case of a no deal, but we knew that that was what we were working towards.
That is oversimplifying the position, and I think the negative impact of the no deal is probably worse than any of us imagine, but clearly that is not now going to happen, so we don't go into that now. But as I say, there are plans which are currently being worked on by a very strong technical team under the guidance of the Chief Technical Officer.
I'll come to Mr. Santos in a moment. I'd like to hear from Mr. Origo, as well as asking you what would you say is important? What needs to be done?
Okay, I think firstly it's important to point out how shocking I think the first few words that came out the minister's mouth was in response to your answer when you asked what will the government be doing to managing increase in traffic, and he said something to the effect of, well, we don't really know at this stage what the impact's going to be. And you think, having been working towards this, having the professionals at hand and people to carry these assessments, you'd have some idea of what kind of impact the flow at the border is going to take. The minister then says that they're considering relocating bus stops and maybe changing how we come in through the frontier, but there's only one way to come into Gibraltar, which is through the Kingsway Tunnel. So the bottleneck isn't going to go anywhere. In that respect. So it's a concern. Like, we all want a treaty, we all want free-flowing frontier, but it does raise a lot of questions. And I think the only mitigating plan in place at the moment is opening the frontier
what would your
and the
solution
runway.
be? I think that's what people want to know. What do you say? It's okay to criticise, but what would the alternative be?
Let's be
No, let him speak.
I'm not going to be dictating the agenda, and you're not going to be dictating how we participate.
We're saying lots of good things, and all you're trying to do is pick faults.
Okay.
And I'm quite relaxed about it.
Such a negative opposition.
If Ms. Origo is happy to give way, then
this is a fundamental point.
Okay.
I have to repeat the basic point which has been put to you. You have been in the driving seat. We are the opposition. We are the opposition, and we are here to question and to subject you to questioning in respect of things that we disagree with. On behalf of the people of Gibraltar, we will be offering. We will be offering the GSD's proposals at the appropriate time, which is closer to the general election, which is usually nothing. And we hope it is called sooner rather than later.
Okay, Mr. Santos, do you want to?
What am I going to say? What am I going to say? It's the same old. I have the Mr. Bossino comes in and he speaks like this, as if it's really
but
and then he says nothing. What I'm trying to say is
the viewer who's trying to get information.
Exactly, the information is we get asked a question, we answer, and then we get accused of not answering. You might not get the answer that you want. We're giving you the answer of how things work. Is it not
a genuine criticism, though, or a genuine question as to why more is not in place?
It's negative opposition.
It is because...
Why are you so nervous about
it? No,
negative. Just defend your...
If we present a strategy, you say, it's just a piece of paper. If we actually do the work...
Sorry, let's hear
You haven't presented a strategy, and that point has not been answered. When are you going to present the strategy?
Let's Mr. Santos have his say.
What's happening at the moment is that there was a lot of work at the same time. As much as we knew that the treaty and how it was going to look, we had to plan for an NNO. We had to plan for a no-deal scenario. So a lot of work went into that, as well as a lot of work going into what was going to happen with the treaty. And now we're actively putting into practice the plans that were made when the treaty was going to come
now,
into play.
I have to bring up something that the Chamber of Commerce has brought up, and also the GFSB, and it's about the interconnectedness of transport. So it's not just about allowing people to arrive into Gibraltar and get on a park and ride. What they want is to ensure that people can get from the port into town, where there's businesses waiting to do business, can go up to the Upper Rock. So it's the interconnectedness of business as well. So I'd like opinions about, or tell me what's happening with that.
I think one zooms out for a moment and sees what it is that we are facing, which is, as you rightly point out, John, is a good problem to have. We are glad and we supported the government in relation to the deal in the House, whilst we have our misgivings. We think that faced with the alternative, which is a no-deal scenario, that this is we're in a much better place. In that context, I think that there are two choke points that we're dealing with. One is the frontier, and interestingly, not having a border still means, or not having a frontier as such, still means that we may still have a choke point, because we're going to have a greater volume of traffic going through what will be ultimately a very narrow stretch of land. And that needs to be addressed. And I think that one of the things that John mentioned earlier about the possibility of entering into an arrangement with La Linea to have the park and ride in La Linea is something that ought to be explored and investigated further. Indeed, our original plan, which was to have a park and ride on the Gibraltar side, may still be a viable option, precisely because, so long as you keep people coming in on sort of the isthmus side of our land, so to speak, on the northern side, it may be possible to simply cross the border. The other choke point that we need to seriously address is that we are seeing increasing numbers of people going to the Upper Rock. And Jews Gate, as we all know, is a very narrow entry point. And I'm already hearing through the people I know in the taxi association that there's being a reconfiguration and a rearrangement of what they want to do there in respect, and maybe John can confirm or deny the position, of how they park their cars. They're now not going to be allowed to remain on a stationary position on the other side of the gates, and will have to park along down the narrow hill that we all know. That is going to create a huge traffic congestion issue into the future. But those are the things that we need to manage. And this is why, with the greatest of respect, we think that we haven't had a proper medium to long-term analysis and strategy of our needs.
Before I let you both answer, is there anything you want to add to that, Mr. Origo, before I let you take the floor?
On that point, now we're talking about moving people around, tourists in particular, to the sides more efficiently, more effectively. And I think for some time now, we've had a situation where there's not been maximum efficiency with bus routes. You have some that are highly adopted and some which are not, some which are more impacted by visitors, and the ones that go to the Upper Rock maybe not get used as much. So we need to kind of reconfigure the routes that we have now, but also do them in a way which is kind of touristically focused and not just residential focused, because that is going to...
I'm very glad to hear Damon's support for our work on the treaty. I'm very glad to hear that he supports our proposal, which I know they have said in the past, for discouraging cars from coming into Gibraltar. I think we can expect greater flow, but we don't know exactly what that flow will be. And that is reality, because we won't know until it happens. In relation to moving people around, there are a number of initiatives now being discussed with a number of stakeholders. On the question of the Upper Rock, this is being addressed. The detail that Damon has on the reconfiguration of Jews Gate is not the ultimate one, because we are actually in discussions currently this week with the Taxi Association in order to decongest Jews Gate. We've already, in conjunction with them, taken steps to decongest St. Michael's Cave, and that is working quite well. The whole area of Jews Gate and the entrance to the Upper Rock is being reconfigured, and we will see that rolling out within the next 12 months or so. And also in relation to moving people up on the Upper Rock, hopefully around the 1st of June, we will be starting our new Upper Rock shuttle, which will move people around.
Are they
from-
two? There's two in the
two
shuttle.
which
Is that
will-
going to be enough?
That is, we think it is going to be enough. We've tried it, but if it's successful, then we can always increase
to
the
it.
number.
I understand
And
that
that will
the-
be moving from Marketplace to the Rock.
Okay, and Mr. Santos, do you want to
you
add
have an
anything?
arrangement there with the Gibraltar Taxi Association
Yes.
as well in terms of income that's derived from those two buses.
It is a joint operation between the Taxi Association and
Yes.
Gibraltar Bus Company
Yes.
Limited.
Okay, Mr. Santos, do you want to add anything to what's been said?
The issues with regards to vehicles in the Upper Rock is something that is not exclusive to now. It's different traffic management because only local cars and licensed vehicles are allowed. So it's the same number of cars that are going to go up now. It's not that we're going to see an influx of tourist cars because they're not allowed to go in the Upper Rock.
But
so
there are people. They're not
Yes,
the cars,
yes.
but the people are going to want to.
the people can go on the walking. A lot of people choose the rise in numbers in up the Upper Rock is in walking
Independent
tourism.
travelers,
So it's the independent traveller that goes up that will still be able to walk, but that won't necessarily be an issue with regard to the actual vehicles going into the Upper Rock causing more congestion. It will be the same number of licensed vehicles.
I'd like to also bring up cycling and scooters, both of which have been in the news over the past week. We had a cycling viewpoint last week. We've had the scooter registration that was announced this week for Monday.
press conference yesterday.
Even though it was announced last year, the register is opening on Monday. I have a question from the Sustainable Travel Action Group in respect of cycling. The government has achieved phenomenal success with ensuring vehicles have remained affordable and cheap to fuel and park, which has resulted in a 50% increase in vehicles on the road in the past 10 years. We now have over 50,000 vehicles for a population of 38,000 people on a road network of 29 kilometres. How happy do you think the electorate will be with progress of alternative, credible and safe active travel solutions when we start experiencing the inevitable increase in periods of gridlock and pollution, which will choke our city? So I think this is in relation to the cycling issue, the fact that as you know, that the lanes haven't quite gone from the frontier to the south as was originally envisaged.
so-
And I must also point out that cycling, whereas it was number 2 in the sustainable travel strategy, the hierarchy of the road, as we heard from Stuart Harrison yesterday, that now encompasses other vehicles.
Yeah, it's still number 2 from the environmental perspective. I mean, I
Yes.
think I've got to point that out. Okay, so the newer arrangement for the frontier will include a 2-way cycle lane right the way across the runway. Obviously, there's the alternative through the tunnel, right the way straight to the frontier without having to loop where the loop is now. So that's going to be an improvement. We are extending cycling infrastructure, as you know, around Chatham, and we are taking steps to improve facilities for cycling in the Waterport area. The South District will be done once the sewage transfer system is done.
When is that likely to happen? Because it's been going on way longer than
that's
it's
a
supposed.
long-term project which takes all the way along from Lavaderia
It was originally
southwards.
12 weeks, and it's
No,
been
that's
like
the particular one on Transport
Lane.
Road, which I had a meeting today, and that will now be completed by the 18th of May.
Yeah.
They were delayed. They say there were rocks that did. Anyway, that's
Okay.
contractors' issues. But we can't do that cycling extension until the
That is
sewage
done.
stream.
Okay.
Once the sewage is put in,
So are you talking
it'll
about a
come back.
lane, a
It'll
South
be
District lane?
a cycling lane along to the south.
Okay.
So that's happening. You raised something else, but I now...
What did I say?
The gridlock and something about gridlock, you said.
Yeah, well, about the number of vehicles. Clearly, we are encouraging cycling, despite, and I know Stuart and the group, and we work together very well.
but are you
And we're
encouraging
also
cycling?
continuing to encourage the move to hybrid and electric vehicles. We announced yesterday roadside electric charging points, so that is also
And one
part of
question
that.
before I come to you, one more question, because we talked about scooters as well. Somebody asked a question about the QR codes. There's concern that if an e-scooter has to display its QR code, that someone might have access to their personal information.
No. That is actually, it's absolutely secure. That was one of the requirements in the development of the software. Only authorized people, who would be the people running the scheme within the Ministry of Transport,
Will be
would
able
have
to
access to
But you
information.
see,
Excellent.
I know it
Okay.
annoys Christian, and he even pokes fun at my manner of debating, but that's a matter for him, and,
don't
and no
poke fun.
no skin off my nose, and my skin is sufficiently thick to withstand
An observation.
jibes
An
and
observation.
observations like that. But the reality is we are opposition, and indeed, they're government. And the fact that you are asking these questions of our co-debaters here, it's because they're government. They're the ones in office, they're the ones in power who have been elected and have the ability to announce these things. It's interesting that we haven't had timelines in relation to the whole spiel of things that John has just announced. But one question that I have is it the case that you are encouraging cycling? And there are other things like encouraging walking that ought to be done. Why? I think the quote that you referred to from that particular NGO talks about 29 kilometers of road network. I think it's probably around the 50 mark, I'm told. There are now 40,000 homegrown inhabitants population in Gibraltar. Add on to that another 15, 20,000 of cross-frontier workers. That's already around about 60,000. Add on to that the visitors that we have round about, 1 million a year. So that presents a huge challenge for Gibraltar. So what we need to do is, if you want to hear some of our thoughts, they may not necessarily become our sort of policy if we were in government, but these are our certain current thoughts, is that we need to look at ways of having more high-density transport. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you need more buses. I go back to the first point I made. In terms of lack of delivery of promises, one of the things that was promised in the manifesto was that there was going to be a route and branch assessment and realignment of the bus service. We haven't had that. Is it the case, and I put a question, whether they are encouraging cycling like Mr. Paul Wellman did when he was in government? I think they've been perhaps less radical than he was in relation to that. Do we have the Walk the Wall project, which they announced many years ago? What's happening in relation to that? So there are many things in respect of which there have been failures and they're failing to deliver. But of course, then it's having a knock-on effect on the rest of us.
OK. I'll give you an opportunity to pick up on those after the break. And we're also going to be focusing on tourism after the break as well. Join us in just a few moments. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to Viewpoint. We're talking about travel and tourism, post-treaty in particular. And I'm joined by the ministers, John Cortes and Christian Santos, and opposition MPs, Damon, Bossino and Giovanni Origo. We were talking about cycling and buses and walking before we went to a break. And I'm going to allow the minister and Mr. Origo to respond on some of the points that were made before we talk about tourism.
Yeah, so I mentioned cycling and what we're doing in the South District and so on. Cycling lanes clearly are a challenge with narrow streets, but we are moving on that, as I mentioned earlier. Walking, we will be introducing wayfinding, for example, for walkers who come into town to be able to find the way up to Moorish Castle and the Upper Rock through there. We are going to be enhancing the safety of walkers along Europa Advanced Road by doing a cliff-top walk, and there are other initiatives like that. So, and signage is very important. In relation to buses, I think our bus service is excellent. I think, if anything, we are victims of our own success. As you know, because we were trialling it only the last couple of weeks, we are acquiring 6 electric buses, which will do the upper town route, and that will release additional buses to increase the frequency, for example, to places like Mount Alvernia, and to allow us to use small buses to bridge the gap between the area of St. Joseph's School and Europa Road, up Naval Hospital Hill. And we are in the process of identifying replacement for the fleet of larger buses.
And
so I think we've got that covered.
Any plans to increase the frequency of buses, travelling into town, for example, for those who are commuting?
Yes, as much as possible within the fleet that's available. Remember, there is a company that has their own private buses, and we're talking to them as well.
OK. Mr. Origo, I'll let you respond.
Just real quick, is that the root and branch review? Because it sounds to me like tinkering. Is that the root and branch review you promised?
We have carried that out internally, and there's no need to
This is the result?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
This is the result of the review?
This is the result of our ongoing daily work to improve the bus service.
But not a root and branch review, which is what you promised?
We are going to be doing that when we get the additional buses, that I
Then you
mentioned.
do the route and route review.
Then we will implement what we know we have to do to improve the bus service.
But that's
The
Okay.
thing, Damon, the thing is, you seem to be obsessed
They
with
still have a year
documents,
left.
strategies,
A year and
and
a bit
reviews, and not with action. You see, what bothers you is that we are taking action, and all you're referring to is documents.
Okay.
No, but-
Let's, Miss Origo. have
Manifestos,
you
which
say.
are quite important.
Yeah.
Two quick points before we move on to
Sure.
the tourism, and I think they're related both to buses, mobility of people, and then the scooters point I wanted to address quickly. And the first one with respect of buses and moving around tourists, I can't just stress and not stress the importance of moving tourists effectively around Gibraltar, because we could have 4 cruise liners docked in the port today and 10,000 people come off the ships. But if we only have the capacity to move around 1,000 visitors to the sites where they're going to spend money in, then what's the point of having more tourists if we can't actually take them to drink water? So I think that's something that we need to address. So the fact that the minister said that they're trialling, I think, shuttle buses with the approval and consent and agreement to the Taxi Association is something that we will keep a close eye on, because it is something that we think should be explored and considered to better take tourists to these spots where we can then sell them tickets, sell them products, and put more money in Gibraltar's coffers. And then on the second point, I want to pick up something my colleague said with whether or not, in his view, he thinks the minister is actively encouraging and promoting alternative transports. And he made the comment that the previous administration and predecessor had a more kind of radical view on how to roll out the cycle lanes for the scooters and the bicycles. And
At a huge expense.
yes, and I think this may be the first government that builds something in one term and then destroys it themselves a second. So if you have a look at the Bayside Road, we spent £450,000 in building a cycle lane, only to destroy it 2 years later because we're building
But that is what
one
you were pushing
Bayside.
for in the entry
and
points.
then
You were pushing
talk
for us
and
to fix
listen
the
to
entry
the minister
points
say
only
that
to
they
destroy
don't
the
have
one
a
that deal with
disjointed
it.
approach, but there clearly is a disjointed approach between transport and
disjointed-
development.
This is
Disjointed
building
approach.
a sewage scheme that we require. We have rerouted the cycle lane through the Victoria Stadium while the sewage scheme is, and then it'll be completely
build it
replaced.
again.
And the other thing that we, but
Because you
we
don't
have
have
to build
money.
sewers.
Because you don't have a
Otherwise,
plan.
you will criticise us for not having a proper sewage
But it
service.
goes back to my first point about not having a proper plan. And
No,
for
of
goodness
course it's
sake,
a plan.
somebody now getting a bit
absolute
excited.
nonsense. We have to build our sewers, otherwise we'll
Okay.
criticise them.
Oh.
No,
It's
but
not good
I
for
think
the-
it's
it's not
very
good for the
important,
blood-
if I may,
Final
It's not good for
point.
the
because
blood
we have to
pressure.
mention the taxi service, which has improved tremendously. Our new London cabs are already circulating. We've increased the ability of more drivers and more vehicles,
Okay. Why is it
and
taking
that
so
is
long?
also,
All right, we're going to leave
Why is it taking so
transport
long?
and travel there because we're going to focus on tourism and our tourism product here in Gibraltar. Before we do that, our reporter Katie Docker went out to Main Street to find out what your views were about what their experience in Gibraltar was from a touristic point of view.
I've only been here a year and a bit, and to me, Gibraltar's like an adult theme park, the whole place. Can't fault anything about it, it's brilliant. Love it.
I suppose there's a lack of things to do in general, but that's based on size. It's not necessarily an issue. It's just where you're going to put these things to do, so that's about it.
We could do better with the cleanliness. The cleanliness is, for tourists, no. We boast about the town, it's lovely, the city and everything, but it should be cleaner.
Maybe have a bigger airport or something that can maybe have more tourists come in, like more boats or something good like that.
I would say the only trouble with the Jib is staying here and doing things for longer than maybe a long weekend or maybe a week. After you've been here for a week, I don't know what the longevity is for staying here for a long period of time. But aside from that, I think there's a lot to do for a lot of different people.
Been cruising myself, and I tell people I'm from Gibraltar. They go, "Oh, we've been there. Such a lovely place." You know, everybody remembers Gibraltar if they've been here.
Gibraltar is an amazing geographically. I have dreamed a lot since my childhood to come here. It's amazing to see 3 flags in one area, one point.
Probably a bit more signposting and things, because I see a lot of people heading up to Upper Town looking for the apes and looking for Moorish Castle and things, and it's quite poorly signposted. And as a local, we have our kind of ways to get to places, but it's really difficult to try and kind of convey that to tourists. So probably better signposts and maybe a little spruce up.
It's amazing into how many shops you go into Gibraltar, into Main Street especially, and people don't know how to speak English. So I think that should be very high up in whoever's list of sorting. At least a certain degree of English should be spoken in the shops.
Maybe sort out the transport a little bit. We've only got one taxi firm. They're not always helpful. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. So, as well as the buses, which is a brilliant service, English, definitely. Cleaning up a little bit, definitely. Signposting, definitely. Just make it a happier experience for them.
So that's some views taken from Main Street. Some of them are tourists, some of them are residents. I think it's fair to say that the tourists seem to be quite happy, but the residents had opinions about what could be done better, such as cleaner, more things to do, encouraging tourists to stay longer, better signposting, English speaking, more English speakers in the shops, and better transport. Those were some of the things that were mentioned.
As you can see, the tourists are very happy with Gibraltar as a tourist product. The local will experience it very differently. For example, something like cleanliness, which is something that us locals speak about very often, isn't something that I get regularly as negative feedback from the tourism sites at all, or where the tourists visit. A lot of it is around residentials. There's, you know, the Main Street is cleaned every day. The city centre is cleaned every day.
Do you think it can't be spruced up a little bit more?
Yeah, of course.
Spruced up isn't just cleaning.
Yeah.
About potholes on the road.
Exactly, but this is what we're doing. Right now,
street.
today, there's been a release, and there's a lot of work that we're doing together to add
a release of what?
Of the new planters to beautify Main Street and
the work
I haven't seen that yet.
The work we're doing with the macaques today, Main Street has been covered in flowering.
We're doing a lot of that, and now I have a team which is where I'm going, which is essentially for that, sprucing up.
Yeah.
We're sprucing it up whenever you need a lick of paint, a little bit here and there, that are minor works that are huge.
Make a difference.
So, for example, I have a great team that's going around, and I get calls from different people from Gibraltar.
But I think that's I was chatting to some of them. They were painting the
planters.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. The planters outside the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because these are the things that we've never been good at in terms of we construct and then we don't maintain. But I think there also needs to be contractual arrangements or whatever, or legal arrangements, if you like, to monitor these things, so that, you know, if you have a private company doing X, then if that same company is going to be doing the management of the sites, for example, then we need to understand what contractual arrangements, what power and obligations can be imposed on that particular company in order to carry on producing a valuable site for the tourist. But yes, I think sprucing up is a word that I've used a lot in the context in the past of our entry points. And I'm sorry to harp on about this, but the reality is that a lot of the things that could have been done in order to improve the land front at entry, for example, or indeed the port entry, where we have so many cruise passengers and the numbers have increased.
We've done a viewpoint on you know, their experience walking from the port into
you've
town.
done one historically, or?
Yeah, I think it was last year where we
exactly.
talked about the fact that it needed
Exactly, and now there are measures which I think John has announced in respect of that particular road, but you know, more needs to be done, and quite frankly, it's too little too late, because the reality is a lot of these things could have been done irrespective of the results of the deal,
okay.
is what we are saying.
Yes.
Anything else?
My point at the beginning with the entry points was...
John, I'm not saying you're not busy on other things, but...
The traffic area, of course that needs work. We all see it. But we had to wait for a deal before we spent millions.
What's the plan, though? What is the vision for the entrance into
I don't
Gibraltar?
think that right now, if the plans haven't been released, is something that we should that I should be necessarily discussing.
Have they been done? Have you actually drawn up?
I have. Yes, the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer, has been working hard with his team. We're in consultation with regards to how it would work. Airport
and when can we expect works to begin?
This will go through the planning process as well, so this will be in public very soon.
But what I'm trying to say is that works for the huge infrastructure in the entry points at the frontier haven't happened because we knew this was going to happen, which means that we wouldn't want to spend a ton of money for them to then tell us what they've just told us about the cycle lanes, which is you put money in the cycle lanes and now you've destroyed them, which is what would have happened if we would have done infrastructure works at the frontier. But sprucing up in the custom...
This is the promise, for example, in relation to the cruise liner terminal in 2023.
Yeah.
And you've only announced an expressions of interest in January. There's no way that you're going to complete this if it is this, because you're telling us that in relation to the frontier, it ain't going to be this, which you also published, right? And people may have voted for you on the basis of that. On the basis of that, There's no way you're going to complete this
I can
in a
answer.
year.
Okay.
In a year. Why
So,
are you so
entry point.
smug when you say...
I'm not so
No,
smug.
okay, claro.
I'm
Yeah,
just
it's
being
got-
factual.
you gotta accept-
Damon,
no,
I'm not going to
accept-
play
you can't take it.
political
Accept-
games.
you can't take it.
Let's let the viewers...
So much, you can't take it.
Let's let the viewers hear an
Just
answer.
accept the premise that I can also answer when you're
Yes,
jabbering
yeah.
on and on and on.
Let's
It
remember
doesn't
that we're
bother
here
me,
to give
Damon. I know it
answers.
doesn't bother me.
Let's remember that we're here to give answers to the viewers.
Exactly, and I would
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah.
So the entry points at a point where we were hanging to see what was going to happen with regards to the Brexit deal, the agreement. We weren't going to invest millions at the time in that. So the frontier has been spruced up with regards to the
With respect,
the walking.
you didn't need millions. I mean, you know, more painting, a bit of sprucing
Yes,
up
but
in the interim, because it has been a few years.
Yes, but the inside, that when you walk in through customs, I've painted that twice in my time here. Twice. Once in my first month and once 6 months ago. I have been upkeeping that all the time because we haven't done major works because we knew that this was
No,
coming.
but it says you come out the
With
other side of
Yes, but
customs
that's
and the
infrastructural
experience.
works. What am I going to paint? Stone? You can't really... What am I going to do with it?
Some planters, make
Yes,
it pretty.
yeah. Okay, agreed.
When are you going to start?
But then with the cruise liner terminal,
When are you going to start?
as I said, we've literally just this week on Tuesday chosen a preferred bidder. I'm meeting again on Tuesday to discuss the MOU because we have done a plan of the whole port as a master plan, because we can't forget that the cruise liner terminal is an industrial port as well. This is not just a separate port for a cruise liner terminal. So I've had to work with the minister for the port. And anyway, we've chosen the preferred bidder. We have a design. As soon as the MOU gets signed, we'll publish all the relevant
When is it going to
details.
start and finish?
Well, I'm meeting them on Tuesday, and as soon as we sign the MOU, they'll go through the process. And ideally, like any company that wants to do it, we're going to work on it to start as soon as we possibly can.
When is it going to finish?
Well,
it's not going to be finished by the time.
Well, it might not be finished, but at least it will be started.
Let's
We'll
ask
finish
some,
it by the time
let's
we're
ask some
next in
specific
government.
questions about tourism. We have a lot of tourists that come into Gibraltar as it is. Are we looking to increase numbers,
Yes.
or are we looking to improve the experience, or is it a hybrid of the two?
It's both. It's a hybrid of the two. We want more numbers, which is what we're seeing, a huge rise in numbers.
But you see, this
and then we're also...
One minute, can we just let him answer the question and then I'll let you respond?
There's different types of tourists. We
Yeah.
have the cruise ship and the coach park, which are day tourists.
Yeah.
This is very beneficial for the town centre.
Yeah.
So the more people we get, the better it is for our local businesses. And then we're also looking at extending the overnight stays, because the more numbers of quality tourists in Gibraltar, the more income that
How
Gibraltar
do you
will
do
get.
that, though? That's the thing.
Well, we
It's
promote
always
it.
been a challenge.
A challenge forward to get more people into Gibraltar?
No, to stay longer than just a day or two.
In the past 2 years, we've already seen a rise from 2.2 nights, and last year we hit 3. I don't have the actual details.
Yeah,
but
that's fine, but it's an
Given them more
increase.
to do.
yes,
Yeah.
what happens is that right now there's a big investment in all new sites.
Okay, all right. Do you want to respond on this side?
Well, it goes to, again, the first point that I raised during the course of this debate, and I think I've been proven right, and we've been proven right, that there is a lack of strategy and a lack of a plan. When we understand what the strategy is, which Christian said last year, and I repeat the point, he was going to be publishing shortly, then, fine, you're going to answer this is not like a quiz show.
Apparently it is.
It is.
Well, just
We
let
need to understand.
Mr. Bossino make his point.
I dare say that that will show is that once again there's been a lack of a vision and a lack of a roadmap and a lack of proper analysis.
If there were
You've just heard him
if there
say.
were to be
You've
a
just
lack-
heard him say. If I may say, you've just heard him say when he said, "What do we need? Do we need more numbers? Is it quantity?" Or quality, in effect, it
And I
boils
said
down to that.
both.
And you've said both.
Yes,
That is not
exactly.
a plan. He's not backing
Yes,
it.
it is a plan.
It is a facile.
No, it is
Maybe
not.
you don't
There
It is
is-
a
there is-
facile.
there are two
I
different
understand
types
it.
of
It is a
tourists.
facile. There are not just two different types of tourists. There are many different types of tourists. And one of the things that maybe we ought to be considering, representation certainly have been made to us, as I'm sure they've been made to you, is, for example, what type of offering do we want for Gibraltar? Do we want, for example, the mid to higher end market? Why do we want that? Because they're going to be spending more money.
Or
I will let you respond in a moment. I
Or
will
do we
let
want,
you-
for example, simply to have
I'm gonna go
a case of, we simply want more numbers. They're clogging our streets, and really all they're going to be doing is buying a T-shirt in Marks and Spencer's
Okay,
and
so it's
a coffee
experience
in
that
wherever.
you feel that we should...
No.
Exactly.
Let's
Maybe
hear
you
from-
want somebody.
Clog your streets.
Maybe you want somebody to spend their time in a, suitable hotel. Quite frankly, the hotel offering leaves a lot to be decided in Gibraltar at the moment, and it has been the case for many years. but we haven't done enough investments in relation to that, and also maybe spending time in good quality restaurants and in high-end shopping and all the rest of it. Is that the type of product that we want?
No. Please let me just go to the Shadow Minister for Tourism, and then you can respond to both.
Maybe the Shadow Minister for Tourism should be the one replying, and
let's
Mr.
hear from him now.
Mr. Bossino should let him speak.
We have two on both sides, and they're both able to speak. So, Ms. Origo.
Ross, thank you for that. And with respect to tourism, we saw that video and different kind of commentaries and reactions depending on the type of person that you spoke to. But the general comments were mostly the same: upkeep, tidiness, cleanliness, the simplicity and easiness to kind of manage and find your way around, information. So these are pretty kind of basic things that we should have been getting right already. And then when we look at, I think the point is very validly made by my colleague on what type of kind of tourists we want to attract. We have the numbers there, and we've seen, I think, to the government's credit, the only positive I might say thing today, that the numbers in the Upper Rock have been slightly going up. But then, in the same token, we had the Viewpoint in January where we had the business community here from Main Street saying that the footfall, the spending is not there. So at the end of the day, what we want from the tourism sector is for tourists to come here in Gibraltar and spend more money. And they either do that by going to more attractions and buying tickets or staying longer to then have more time to go to more attractions and stuff like that. So how do we do that? And I think one of the rightly valid comments made is, well, what type of tourists do we want to attract? We already attract the elderly type of tourist that's into heritage, into kind of a military history, that likes to see the Upper Rock, Britishness of Gibraltar. But then we also have high-end, high spenders, which will be low impacting, and then also balance with the needs of the community, because we need to think whether we want to be a very bustling city, but how that will also affect residents here locally. And there has to be a balance struck in between. I think we need to kind of, as a community, reflect on that.
You need to talk
right now.
We were saying that there wasn't enough footfall in Main Street, and you're saying you don't want Main Street clogged.
About spending, I think it's the issue of spending.
I need to reply. We have I'll explain to him so that he understands. Last year, I said, I'm going to publish it before the end of the year. And then...
You didn't.
I didn't. Yeah, and I didn't because there was a big part of it which was reliant on the treaty. Now this has happened. We've changed that part because it's now irrelevant, and now I can publish. I'll give you the copy of the designs, and then I'll publish it. It's generally not a secret. It's not. We're working towards a strategy, and that's why we're seeing the success of Gibraltar's numbers.
When can we see that published?
Yeah. So the numbers, the numbers are up. The numbers are all up, and they have the same tourism survey that I have. So we all get the same numbers and we all see how they're working. With regards to the focus and the strategy, for us it's middle to high end. And that's our demographic anyway, from mid to late 40s and up and up. A big part of our strategy is, for example, on the cruise liner sector. It's a great sector for us because they don't clog up the streets. They come and they invest direct. It's a very easy direct investment. They go on tours, they go into town, and we're trying to attract the more luxury cruise liners, which is what we have now. Those are higher spenders. But we also want the other side, which are the people with families who come for the day and they spend the day in Gibraltar and they spend time in Main Street. But a lot of it is, the spend is split. That's why I say we have two types of tourists. The ones that spend it on the Upper Rock Nature Reserve, that's why we have such a vast increase in income and in numbers, and then we'll have the people that stay overnight and they
But why
they go
is
to
there no
hotels
shuttle? Why is there no shuttle? It's quite a simple thing to do, bringing people from the ship into town, particularly with elderly families. I mean, it would make it so much easier.
There is a shuttle. It's run by the taxi service,
Oh,
it's not a physical shuttle, but the taxi service works as a shuttle.
Yes, but that's
we
a
are
lot more
discussing
expensive
with...
than
It would cost the same.
Yeah, but we're discussing with more than one provider to have an alternative form of shuttle.
Yeah.
At the moment it's...
Can I just ask...
Something return or something like that. It's the same as any shuttle.
Before we go back on this side, is there something that you want to add?
No, I think...
Yeah, are you quite happy with...
Well, I think there's all sorts of different... There's also the niche tourism, the people who want heritage, the people who want nature. I mean, all these things. I think
diving as well.
Diving, and we're promoting all of this.
Bird watching. We do a lot of work with all the different niche markets that Gibraltar offers.
Very successfully.
So a large proportion of the, statistically, as you rightly point out, we all get, shows that a large proportion of the visitors from Spain. Are we going to be attending the Fitur Fair at any point in the future? Because you stopped that before your time in office, your personal time in office, but your party in office stopped that. So why don't we go to Fitur? Campo de Gibraltar, all of them go. and we don't sell our
Gibraltar
wares.
has representation.
No.
The tourist board doesn't go at the
yes,
time.
That's what I'm saying.
Gibraltar
But it
is
did before,
represented.
and then he stopped it.
Yes, it was stopped, and at the time it wasn't felt like it was of much benefit, and there was other markets that we wanted to reach out to. Now with the deal, we'll reconsider and see what works. Now we're looking at other, not just Fitur.
Okay.
There's ITB in Barcelona. There's others. But the plan is not to go this year.
I have to say, I'm sorry. As always, the discussion has been very, very lively, but we have come to the end of the programme. So I am going to ask you, one on each side, to just give me your final thoughts. Briefly, Mr. Origo, do you want to just start, and then we'll...
Yeah, so final thoughts wrapping up is tourism and transport are both interlinked, and we could have more tourists, but if we don't sort out the transport, we're not going to maximise the benefits. And the same happens in the reverse. We can have the great of numbers of tourists, but without having a really good system, the experience is not going to be as good. They're not going to spend the money. We're not going to generate as much revenue from it. So we need to tackle both things hand in hand. There needs to be a joint-up approach when kind of coming up with plans for dealing with these two sectors. And from our point of view, we need to assess whether we think the government have made transport easier for people? Is it cleaner, the air to travel in? Are we in a healthier place? And are tourists enjoying the experiences and being able to get to the places they need to on time? And we think that that's not been done to its fullest potential, and that's our critique of the government.
Okay.
We all have a job to do. Our job is to make sure that tourists come to Gibraltar. We market the destination. We make sure that transport works. We get the tourists from wherever they are up to the Upper Rock Nature Reserve on a tour or whatever way that they choose to go. Get them into town, get them spending money. The numbers speak for themselves. It seems like we're doing our job, and I understand that their job is to tell us that what we're doing is wrong. But as I say, the numbers speak for themselves. And if you just walk down Main Street, if you look at social media, what you see is people saying, goodness, Main Street is jam-packed, or look how many cruise ships we have, and that speaks for itself.
OK, thank you very much, Mr. Bossino.
I'm happy to go last.
Well, we let the minister go last.
The last word.
And briefly, please, as well. Thank you.
Well, I think what we have been able to show is the disjointed thinking, the disjointed approach. I know it causes sort of angst on the other side, but it's true. The lack of strategy. We're talking about we want quality, we want quantity, and the numbers speak for themselves. They do not speak for themselves. I think we have a potentially serious problem that we've debated and we've had the opportunity to discuss with our colleagues on the other side, but this is a very serious problem and we need to tackle it. It is a pity that we haven't had a proper chance, and now with John's right of reply, he may be able to give some details as to what the arrangements are, and I mentioned it briefly, in relation to the sites in the Upper Rock. You know, where you have private companies in effective privatisation of all these sites, and indeed of the entire Upper Rock, it seems, and they're getting a cut from the ticket sales. And, you know, what type of performance indicators will they be subjected to? Why wasn't these things subjected to a tender? And what cut will they be getting from the increased revenue that we're getting as a result of the increase in the ticket sales? To the tune, of many millions of pounds.
I
think that's a lack of respect to you, Ron.
Yes.
As a chair.
Sorry, may I just say we are not going to tackle that now because we've come to the end of the programme and the minister
is not going to distract me from what I was going to say, but it's been done absolutely fairly. It's bringing a lot of money into improving Gibraltar, and I can answer that in Parliament if he wants. I have all the answers, and we have done it absolutely perfectly.
So your closing thoughts, please.
So let me just finish. Gibraltar is a wonderful place. It's getting better, it's getting tidier, it's getting greener. I think what we have to do for the tourists is give them more to do, and at the same time, for the residents, give them more to do, because all the improvements in our heritage sites is good educationally, and for us, local Gibraltarians, to be able to enjoy our surroundings. So we want the tourists to enjoy, to stay more, to spend more. And what I tell the general public, the people who we work for in government, look around, see for yourself how Gibraltar is improving, and watch this space.
All right, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. It's been a very lively and interesting debate, but clearly still much more to talk about, and perhaps we can, once the frontier is open, we can have another discussion.
With Damon, it'll be a good one. Yeah?
Thank you very much for watching. Viewpoint returns next week. Hopefully we'll be focusing on the hotel industry next week. Join us then. Thank you very much. Good night.